Hello, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'll see if I can mute this background noise and go ahead and turn Okay, so forgive me as I deal with some technical glitches. Okay. And so it looks like we have about 40 people signed up so far. Welcome. I have a brief presentation to go over, and then we can talk about some outstanding club business, and then we can get to probably the most important part, which are your questions and answers. Well, your questions and hopefully my decent answers. Go ahead and start my presentation. Hit play. So we'll talk about what you should be doing right now with your colonies, and I'll discuss equipment, what you should do with dead outs, how you should be feeding your colonies if they need to be fed, and what you should start doing during your inspections once we get going. So for your equipment that's overwintered, that's been in storage or from a dead out, you should start to clean it, paint it. For new beekeepers who have hopefully ordered their equipment by now, if you haven't, I strongly encourage you to do so. So then you need to assemble it. Type Bond 3 is a food safe glue. It has low curing time. It has a decent curing time in terms of when you first apply it to when it dries. I like using screws to hold the equipment together while the glue cures, and then paint your equipment. Any old paint will do, but whatever equipment you should have, you should start cleaning it and assembling it now. You don't want to do what I've done in the past, which is wait for a coat of paint to dry to go run it over to the beehives itself. Check your bare fencing, your electric fencing. Make sure your deep cycle marine batteries have and can still hold a charge. You want to start putting up your bare fencings now. I encourage you to start taking notes, whether you use the hive inspection sheets that I developed or your own method. We have blooms right now. You can start to take notes on forsythias blooming, crocuses, pussy willows. Take note of the date. As the forage season progresses, you'll be able to see and in future years how you should adjust your calendar and your practices accordingly. And we'll talk about when you should take off your wraps and insulation. So I know most of us have been working at home these days, and it's been especially hard for me to get out. I haven't been able to get out. I've been waving at my bees through the windows as I've seen one of my hives flying about and being busy. So if you don't see any bees flying out of your hive, then it's probably deceased, and it would be prudent to seal it off. Take some painter's tape, seal over the mouse guard that you have on until you have a chance to go in and examine what's happened. It happens to the best of us, whether it's your fault or circumstances outside of your control. We've had a lot of crazy weather, and there's a very good autopsy chart put out by the Maine Beekeepers Association. Alex Marston, or is it Madsen? I apologize, I'm horrible with names. He did a presentation at the February meeting on how to autopsy your dead hive, and it'll give you an idea on what happened to your colony and how you can go from there. Learn from your mistakes. We, during the season, when you get a little negative feedback from the bees, it's usually more painful. This time of year, the negative feedback is more financial, and sort of don't lose hope. It happens to the best of us, but you can learn from your mistakes, see what happened to the colony. We'll talk about that during the question and answer period. Some of you had questions, but this is an excellent opportunity to practice an alcohol wash. If you haven't done so, I highly encourage you to start doing them. They're much more accurate than sugar rolls. To do a sugar roll accurately, you're going to be damaging the bees, and if not killing them altogether. Alcohol washes are much more accurate than sugar rolls or mite drops, mite counts on the bottom board or sticky boards. So if you have a dead out, you don't have to worry about killing the bees because they're already dead, and you can take advantage of a colony by practicing, scooping up, getting a half cup of bees, putting it in alcohol and swirling around and seeing what sort of count you have. You can take a small sample, do that, send a sample down to the USDA lab in Beltsville, Maryland. That's the bee lab. It's a service paid for by us taxpayers, and you can compare and contrast to see what sort of counts you see and what the official count is from the bee lab. The bee lab, unless you have access to microscopes, will also look at nosema counts. But you can take advantage of a dead hive and see what's going on and practice for the upcoming year. And I know I can hear some of you thinking this. What do we do if we don't have alcohol? If you don't have grain alcohol, because you need at least 70% isopropyl rubbing alcohol, and that is in short supply right now. You can use what the state apiarist in Maine and in Massachusetts are both recommending is windshield washer fluid, because it doesn't suds up, it doesn't get all foamy, and you can use that on a temporary basis until things return to normal and we can continue to return to using rubbing alcohol. Okay, so if you have a dead out, one indication that you may have mites is this image that you see on the left side of your screen, which are, you'll see some granules, and those are guanine crystals, and that's mite poop. On the right side of the screen with the light colored, yellow colored comb, you'll see different style crystals. That's actually crystallized honey and some sugar crystals.
He's the one that's
so
speaking.
learn and do a Google search, and you can find some high resolution images in your screen, but that can be an indication of what happened to your hive. So we're going to move on to from deadouts to what you should be doing with your hives that are still alive. So unfortunately, the threat of starvation from your for your hives is still real this time of year. You want to make sure that they still have uh, at least half a super's worth or a third of a super's worth of honey. So if they're light, you want to feed them. Recommend feeding either granulated sugar, fondant, sugar bricks. And I think it's still a little too cold to feed them liquid um,
Really?
sugar syrup. So I don't recommend sugar syrup until the temperatures get above 50 degrees during the day and are consistently above freezing at night. What you can do is if your cluster is at one end of the box and they have some frames of honey close by,
Cluster
but
is not
not touching the
sitting
cluster, carefully
like you were
move
up here.
the honey frames closer to the box. Just like
As
during
you see, there's no
the
picture.
normal year when you're do stimulative feeding with a pollen patty, you want to put the pollen patty right where the brood is, right where the nurse bees have access to it. You want to make sure that the cluster has syrup and honey, whatever is in the hive right now that they've stored away, and put that right next to the cluster as close as possible. Once you start feeding pollen substitute, and if they're going through the candy boards, they're going to be consuming their stores at a faster rate right now because they're building up brood. So they need to feed the new brood. Um, as I told my bee class, it takes a cell's worth of um, sugar, carbohydrate, a cell's worth of protein, and a cell's worth of water to make a new bee. So they're going to go through those stores very quickly. Um, Once you start feeding, especially protein, you don't want to stop. A week and a half ago, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, I went in, I put a pound of pollen patty, pollen substitute, a protein patty in the hive. And a week later, I went in and they'd gone through practically the whole thing. So once you start feeding, you need to stay on top of it and make sure that they're continue feeding. Do not open feed. Well, in my immediate area, there are between a dozen and 2 dozen hives within a half mile of where I keep my bees, my little apiary. So I don't recommend open feeding because you're feeding not only your own bees, but whatever other bees are in the area. And those other bees are coming in contact with your bees at open feedings, and they can be getting some sort of, if they're carrying mites, they're going to be transferring it to your colonies. So if you're going to feed within the colonies, whether it's feed them within the colony itself and put the protein patty right where the cluster is, right where they're raising brood. And for new beekeepers who are joining us who don't have their bees yet, you want to start feeding your bees as soon as you install
That's
them into
why
your
you're not
package.
used to doing
Uh,
it!
get
Exclamation
a new
point.
nuke,
She
give
always
them a
did it.
protein patty,
What
and
do you think would be
sugar
helpful
syrup.
to you?
You want to start
Is
feeding
that
them
an alarm?
almost
Question
immediately.
mark?
So, a lot of questions so far have come in about inspections. What should you be doing this time of year? It's still pretty cold. We're still getting below freezing at night, and what you don't want to do is a full inspection. Taking the outer cover off, the inner cover, and peeking down is perfectly okay. Um, but you want to check to see that the colony is still alive, where it is in the box. Are they at the top? What sort of food stores do they have in on hand? If you have any stored honey that you put in your freezer that you can take from a dead out that's not all covered in nosema, dysentery, just hive that's died of starvation. You can take an individual frame and put that in and replace empty frames near the cluster. Or if you have an entire box that's full, put that right on top and keep going. What I don't recommend is if you have 3 or 4 frames of honey and the rest are drawn or empty or undrawn frames, putting that on top. It's better to put either 100% or individual frames. So once we get into warmer weather, tomorrow is going to be near 60, or I hope, or today was near 60. Unfortunately, I was inside all day. What can you do to start gauging the strength of your colony? Well, you're going to start to see heavy traffic at the entrance, and you should be seeing 30 to 90 bees per minute, especially at the warmest times of the day. When you take off the top cover, when you take off the inner cover, you should see all the frames covered with bees. And when it's warm enough, when a nice warm sunny day that's not a lot of wind, you can take out some brood frames and check to see the quality of your queen. Do you see eggs? Do you see larvae? That shows that the queen is present. If you find her, you can mark her if you've been practicing holding drones. But does the queen have a good laying pattern? And again, if you haven't started feeding pollen, it's probably a good idea. It's definitely safe to do so now, at least what I've been able to determine from long range forecasts. So once you start feeding until we get into the dandelion flow, and I'd probably feed at least through then. So if you have a good queen, if she's laying, if she has a good pattern, may want to consider reversing your boxes. That's the process of taking your full honey super, or if the bees have moved up to your second deep box, or if you have medium boxes, if they moved up to the top of the colony, the bees like to work upwards. They like to have their brood at the bottom and the honey on top, so you can move, basically swap boxes and move the colony down. It's good to do that when it's nice and warm, when you're doing it, but also followed by a couple of nice days of warm temperatures. That way, it helps to ensure that the brood will survive the mood. When you start to do frame manipulations, when you start breaking those propolis seals and manipulating boxes, this is a perfect time to do an early alcohol wash, do a mite count, find out where your mite level is, and that gives you a good information on where to move forward. If you need to do a treatment, what are the temperature ranges for the treatment? What can you start doing? You can take the entire colony apart, clean off your bottom board, and it's also a good time to start rotating oldest frames out and new frames in, so that they have fresh wax and it's not a problem with pesticide buildup in the wax itself, and especially in the brood area. And when the temperatures are consistently not freezing, you can remove your outer tar paper, your winter wraps, your insulation. And once again, it's a perfect time to start taking notes. How many frames of brood do you have? How's the quality of the queen's laying pattern? And what's the forage like? I just saw a nice Forsythia bush that I usually gauge my my forage area in. That's blooming now, and I have to check my notes from last year and start to compare and contrast and to have an idea. As far as I know, we are a couple weeks ahead of normal schedule, or at least in regards to last year. So, but the weather determines our calendar and not the days itself. So keep that in mind. I think that's all I've had for in terms of dealing with equipment, dealing with basic inspections, looking at dead outs, we can go over that in question and answer. We can get into club business. God willing, we will be able to get together next month for our annual spaghetti dinner. That's tentative right now. It depends on the progress of the um, pandemic right now and whether we're able to flatten the curve enough by that time. Hopefully, uh, warm weather will ensue and we'll be able to get outside. And May 9th is our scheduled spring workshop. That's going to be at the Colony in Tingsboro, Massachusetts. And we have a couple speakers already lined up. Once we have a little more information, we'll send that out to the membership. If you have a subject that you'd like to speak to, that you're experienced with, that you'd like to share with other members, please send me an email. Send Ed Culkin, our membership coordinator, Philip Thomas. They are the workshop coordinators, so let us know. Looking forward, we have our June meeting has traditionally been the same day as the Mass Field Day. We moved our summer meetings to the second Saturday of each month because there are a lot of holidays at the end of the month, and we're inevitably falling on a 3-day weekend. So we don't have, in order for experienced members to be present, it's easier to move that to the second Saturday. Anyways, we definitely have July 11th, August 8th, and September 12th available. I've had a few inquiries from people who cannot make it on Saturdays due to religious or work obligations. And there's a question on whether we could meet on a Saturday, possibly a Sunday, and possibly mid to late May or June. I'm going to put that up for the membership and see if there's enough interest. Mike Bako and Al Horton were longtime members. Al Horton was treasurer in the club. Mike Bako was a member of, I believe, every single Massachusetts Beekeepers Association and New Hampshire Beekeepers Association. He came to every single meeting. They both contributed a great deal to my early development as a beekeeper and to many beekeepers in the club. They were profound mentors and provided a great deal of information and shared experience. So I'd like to honor them in some way, and I've been thinking about this and sharing ideas with some of the other board members. And we discussed possibly doing some sort of a research grant. And I had the idea of possibly doing a t-shirt sale. So we have a nice brand new MCBA logo. It would be nice to get that on the front of a t-shirt and have possibly a design of some sort on the back and sell those beginning at the spring workshop. So I'm going to send out an email soliciting designs. We can have a round robin or March Madness style bracket and narrow down our favorites. Proceeds from sales of t-shirts, if there's an interest in t-shirts, would go towards the education grant. Tom Fiore, our current president, has asked about some sort of a book bag that would say, support your local, support the bees, buy local honey, and have a MCBA logo on the other side of the bag. We're looking into both those designs. If there's interest, again, I'll be sending out an email to the membership and finding out what we can do.
I had a couple other names that I tried to
locate from there. Finally, a mention of
wow, jeez. Yeah, I saw the name and I thought it can't possibly be him because
actually, the annual meeting,
I'm married, so my name is Paula Herbert and
if we need a
I'm thinking,
person,
it can't be.
or
It can't
if we
be.
don't need a person, we'll have to jury rig something
Tony,
Yes.
lines of this
Tony.
meeting online. But
Yes.
we will
So
be electing
where-
our new club
Are you-
officers.
Like Jan,
I
like
have
in,
offered to
with her mother? Is that what they're
Excuse me, Tony.
doing?
in Tom's stead
Tony.
as
Excuse
president.
me, Tony.
Philip
Tony.
Thomas has
Tony, hold on.
volunteered
Tony.
to take over
Tony.
as vice president.
Tony.
We do need
He's been there
a
ever since. We
director
left
to
you.
take his place in his
We
current
can't
role.
hear him. If someone has to mute their microphone.
Tony. Paula, please mute your
directors
microphone.
usually attend the
And well, when did you separate?
State Beekeepers Association meetings. Not only the workshops and field days,
I don't know,
but
maybe it's
the
this thing. I don't know, but I'm sorry if.
the board
You're sorry.
of directors meetings
Somebody
and
needs to
represent
mute their
the club.
microphone.
So if you're interested,
Paula Herbert needs to mute.
if you're interested in local politics, this is something to get involved with, and we could definitely appreciate having some additional support. So final note is that it's time to renew. If you haven't renewed for the 2020 beekeeping year, please send in your membership form. I think we're still having a few technical issues with the website. So until we iron those out, if you don't mind, just filling that out on paper and mailing a check. The information is on the website as well as in our newsletters that go out. Okay, and with that, I'm going to open up the floor for questions and answers. And let me see if I can get to the chat section and find out where.
Hey, Tony,
Oops, nope, we're not done yet. Okay,
Tony, can you
so
hear me?
I'm going to stop the share. Unfortunately, everything was working perfectly before while I was testing this. And I don't have, okay, there we go. I'll go to chat and have video and move this up. And here I am. And thank you everyone for joining us. We're up to about 30 or 40 people right now. And
What's up, Bob?
yes, please.
Tony, can you hear us?
I don't think Tony can hear us. Everyone should be hopefully mic'd off. For now, we're going to use the mic button. We're going to keep everything moused off. Turn on your audio. Phil has a message. So, okay, can everyone hear me now?
Tony, can you hear us?
I assume.
Can you hear us, Tony?
Sound effects.
Tony, can you hear us?
Hello? Yes.
Doesn't sound like it.
Okay, you hear me now. Okay, I have access to the meeting. Could people hear me as I was going through the presentation, or was it entirely quiet?
Tony, can you hear us?
Let's see now. Tony cannot hear us. Yes, because I have everyone muted. And let me see if I can unmute manage participants. And unmute all.
Yes,
Tony, can you hear
unmuted.
So people should be able to hear me. Some people should be able to speak.
And we can hear you, but can you hear us?
Can you hear us, Tony?
You can hear me fine.
Yeah.
And let's see now. System preferences.
I tried jumping in and helping, but there I just leave it alone.
Down. This down.
Yeah.
Wait. Let me try speakers. I should be able to hear you. I am not on my phone using the computer. Sharing is
Tony,
paused.
can you hear us, Tony?
Mute. Select the speaker. Nano. Input speakers. I apologize. So were you able to hear my presentation, or should I go through it again quickly?
Can you hear us, Tony?
Yep, I can hear you now.
Okay, stop for a second, okay? Tony, this is Phil
Yep.
Thomas. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, so first of all, Paula Herbert has to mute her phone or her system because there's a lot of racket coming out of her side, and we missed a lot of what you said. Second
Okay.
of all, you need to go back and repeat what you were talking about right towards the end when you mentioned my name and other things like that, because none of us could hear that because there was so much noise coming from Paula.
Okay. So I
You would have
thought
found it so painful.
I had muted everyone, and I apologize. So I'm going to go ahead.
Now you should mute everyone, Tony.
Yep. Okay. Can everyone still hear me? If you can type a quick note in chat. Okay. Here's the chat window. Okay. Great. Excellent. I'm going to go quickly through. So the question is, how much of the presentation did you miss? Going through, could you see the words? Could you see the presentation? Everything's better now. Okay, let me go through the, oh, we heard and saw everything. Oh, that's good. Just the last slide mostly. Okay, let me pull up the last slide and resume share. And resume share. Sharing is okay. Keypad. Okay. It did work better. Okay, let's see if we can do share here. Play. Okay, so the last share. Okay, so the final slide was on club business. I'm going to put this down. And what we have is our annual meeting, which hopefully we'll be getting together if the pandemic social isolation measures have been lifted. If not, we will definitely do an improved get together online next month. We have election of club officers. I've offered to take over the presidency from Tom Fiore. Philip Thomas is going to take over my role as vice president. So we have a dearth of, we have a position open as a director. Directors usually meet with the Massachusetts Beekeepers Association. They go to their board meetings and represent the club. So if you're interested in local politics, which they are involved with, if you're interested in the beekeeping at state level and representing the club, we greatly appreciate a volunteer. May 9th is our spring workshop. I'm definitely hoping to be out of doors and getting together by that point. We have a few new speakers lined up, someone to speak about bear fencing in addition to our old and tried and true presenters. So if you have something that you are experienced with and like to share with other members in the club, this is definitely an opportunity to do so. We are always looking for new speakers and new subjects to cover. moving on to June, our traditional, we meet on the second Saturday of each month, and June 13th is the Mass Bee Field Day. So we encourage all beekeepers to go to that. If you're interested in hosting one of the July, August, or September meetings, please send me an email. I've had some inquiries by members looking to join, looking for a Sunday meeting if possible. So if you'd like to get together in June, in mid to late May or June on a Sunday, please let me know. I will send an email to the membership gauging their interest. We've had some longtime members who passed away within the last year or so. Mike Bako came to every single one of our club meetings. He was a member of all of the Massachusetts beekeeping clubs as well as New Hampshire, where he was from. He was a sought-after honey judge at contests, not only here in New England, but around the country. So, and Al Horton was a longtime treasurer of the club, and both of them offered a great deal to us and mentored many of the people who have been in the club for a number of years. So I thought it would be nice to have an education grant of some sort that would go towards a research grant that would go towards bettering of beekeepers, so practical beekeeping. And I thought a way to do that would be to raise money from the sale of t-shirts. We have a nice new MCBA logo. We could put that on the front of a shirt and have a design of some sort on the back. So I'd like to open that up. There's been interest from the membership in some sort of swag from the club. Tom Fiore has inquired about some sort of book bags that say support local, support your bees, buy local honey on one side, and the MCBA logo on the other side of the LO Bean, one of those nice big canvas bags. So I will send out messages about that, and a reminder that it is time to renew. So those were the club business. And other than the general presentation that I had earlier, we can just go on to general questions and answers from people on what the status of their hives are, dealing with dead outs, and questions about the upcoming season. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stop that. You can see me, hello. If you'd like to unmute, I think it'd be easier if you have any questions to go with the chat, but if you can't type, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask away. So,
hi, Tony.
oh, hi, Bernie. How are you doing?
I'm good. So I want to swap out my solid bottom boards for screen bottom boards.
Sure.
Do you think that would be a good thing to do in April, or just wait until it gets warmer?
I would wait until it gets a little warmer. So again, when it's above 60 degrees, that's a good time to do it, because you're going to be breaking apart most of your boxes to get down to the bottom. So I would probably wait until it's a little warmer. I think it's still too cold out, and the last thing you want to do right now is to chill any brood and set the bees back in any way. So the little patience, as Elton Brown says, your patience will be rewarded. So definitely go that route.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the bees are bringing in lots of pollen over the last 2 weeks. Could we get away with without installing pollen patties? Well, so that was from Daniel Cook. That's a good question. Yes, you can get away without installing pollen patties, the advantage of pollen patties is like a, I don't know, a rainy day fund. What it can provide is cushion. So they're bringing in pollen right now, but we could have a few days of rain, and they'll start to exhaust that supply of pollen that they've brought in. So having a protein patty of some sort provides just a little cushion, bumpers to, I think it's just insurance. So you can get away with it. But I think is that Mike Garvey says they prefer fresh pollen, but they'll use pollen patty if they need it. Exactly. That's the way to go. So it's only there in case they need it. And once we're still a few weeks away from dandelions, so it's just insurance until we get there. Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to get to chats. Club stuff. That's good. Bring in pollen. Okay, questions. I know you guys have questions. Speak a little bit about how know when you need to split a hive. How to know when to split a hive? Well, splitting a hive is if you'd like to make an increase, if you'd like to go from one colony to 2 colonies, that's always good. If you want to go that route. If you're looking for a honey harvest of some sort and you have overwintered colony, then I'd recommend not splitting. But you can get away with doing uneven split, just taking the queen away with a few frames of brood once we get into the warmer period, and giving them either a newly bought queen and to get going, or so basically what you're doing is creating an artificial swarm, and you can do an unequal split. So leave most of the bees behind in one colony, the master colony, and that one will be your honey producer. And then you can have a second colony going. It really depends on what you want to do, what your goals are. So if you want basically, so you want to avoid swarming. So you can avoid swarming by making sure they have lots of room, by making sure that the conditions that would help them or induce them to swarm don't materialize. So providing the queen space delay, giving them an overhead, making sure that the overhead honey dome isn't complete, that there are breaks in that will help prevent swarming. So when you say clean your hives, do you frame clean boxes or just scrape and boil? So when I say you can clean your tools with hot boiling water and then scrape that off and oil them afterwards. You can scrape any sort of, if there's dysentery on the colonies, if there's mite crystals, if there's mite pooped guanine crystals, I recommend using the 10% bleach solution, using a spray bottle or a pump sprayer like for the garden, and spraying that into the cells and shaking those out and airing that out. So that's when I mean cleaning the boxes. Remember not to leave a split queenless. Oh yes, you definitely want this time of year. So when you make the split between the big colony, the master colony, and the uneven split, or if you take the queen away with a few frames of brood, it's definitely better to have a new box queen, a little cage queen in there, or if they're in the midst of raising a new one. But you don't want to leave them queenless because you want that buildup. You want a large field force going into May and June to take advantage of the forage. Okay. I need a flame clean because of a dead out. Oh, using flames. You can scorch. What you want to do is make sure you know how the colony died in that autopsy report from the Maine Beekeepers Association. I think that's on our website. If not, I'll make sure that we have a copy on the internal website. It's a nice PDF that can go through step by step. And, you know, are you seeing this? Are you seeing that? Are you seeing what's going on, and that helps you narrow down what happened. So using flame to get rid of any dysentery, I probably use, I've got old brushes that I use for scrubbing pots and pans that after a couple of a month or two that are not perfect for cleaning out the dishes anymore, but they're perfectly fine for washing down with bleach. So that's what I use. I don't use flames that much anymore. So that's just personal preference. I have a deep brewed box and 2 medium boxes on top. Should I swap the middle, medium, and deep and have a medium on the bottom? Yes, that is a good way to do it, especially if the brew if the colonies moved up to the 2 mediums, and if they're in one entire medium, you can put that on the bottom. So you'd have a medium, a deep, and a medium again. So I plan on making a split, and do I even have to swap boxes? If you're planning on making a split and they're in the top 2 mediums, you can do an even split, 8 frames or 10 frames of a medium in one colony, 10 frames in another. It really depends on the strength of the colony. So that's, you can take a few frames out. There's lots of different ways to do that. So, American foul brew is too dangerous that you can clean equipment with flames. The only way to clean equipment with flames, if you have American foul brood, is going 100% and burning it all together. So I wouldn't keep any comb, any woodenware if you have American foul brood. You can send that out for testing as well. So if you have questions, if you think you have American foul brood, if there's brood in there and you stick in a little toothpick and it's ropey and stringy, call the state beekeepers, the apiarist, the state apiary program, Dr. Kim Skirm. They'll send out an inspector. They have testing kits available and they can confirm it one way or another. I wouldn't use any American foul brood. I would just burn that away. So use flames and go 100% with it. Throw away any drum comb that has bee poop on it. Yeah, if you have a frame that's heavily covered in dysentery, just throw it out. Sometimes beekeepers, we're much too frugal than others. So toss your old frames, cycle in new equipment. It's much better that way. But in terms of the boxes themselves, you can use that with a Clorox solution. Tom, I agree 100% with Tom on that. Octavio, to everyone that cleaned my house today, being a little warm. Bees died due to temperature shock. Yep, there's that going around. Bees were there dead, some hanging on frames. What you can do is take a sample, Octavio, and send that into the bee lab. Do an alcohol wash. So I would go that route. So Mike Garvey says to not give bees too much space, empty space. So if you have 2 deep boxes right now, I would not add the honey supers. I would not give them more space to police. You don't want to give them too much space. You want to keep them nice and cozy at this point in time. As we start to get warmer, you want to make sure that they do have space to expand. But at this point in time, late March, and for the next 2 weeks, they should be fine as is. What is your mite treatment of choice this time of year to late April? This time of year to late April, I'd probably use an oxalic vaporization. That's just my preference. People who are more familiar with Apistan or Apigard Life and Apigard, I think the temperature ranges are still too low for the other treatments. The advantage of the vaporization is that once you get above 40, 45 degrees and they're not in a tight cluster, the vapors can penetrate the cluster and they do have capped brood. And those vapors won't get into the beneath the cappings. But what you do have is the phoretic mites, or the dispersal phase, which is becoming to be known as right now, where the mites are on top of the bees. You can get those. So let's see now. Someone said
Cite your question.
Darby.
Yeah.
Okay, so okay. Hold on.
Hello?
Hello, Paul?
Yeah. One of my hives, when I opened it up about a month ago, no, a couple weeks ago, no bees anywhere.
Okay. So they probably absconded for some reason. One thing I would do is, if you have any pollen frames of pollen in there, I would throw those away. I wouldn't keep those. They left for a reason, whether it was for disease or what, whether it was just a small cluster, I don't know why they left. But if your colony is devoid of bees right now, I'd remove any protein that you have in there, and
Okay.
I'd probably clean your frames with bleach, so that 10% bleach solution.
Okay.
Bring that into the frames, dump out the bleach, air it out in the sun. Ultraviolet rays will kill any sort of eczema spores. A couple hours exposure, so nice sunny day. What you do not want to do is, if you have any frames of honey, leave those out. You want to keep those separate, and those are for you. I would probably wouldn't feed those to the bees either. I keep those for yourself. So you can crush and strain those. You can put them in your freezer right now. Once it gets nice and warm, take them out and warm them out and extract that honey. So
Okay. Thank you.
my opinion.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so let's see now. Very good charts on mite treatments. Bee Informed Partnership. The State Beekeepers Association, not the state apiary program, has some nice charts on treatment as well. So season, temperature, those are the places to check. Bee Informed Partnership is probably the leading place in the United States. Thank you, Mike, for that reference. That's the place to check for. So are there any new considerations for beekeepers during coronavirus? Social distancing is fine. The only correlation that I can think of is that, if you have a high mite load, mites are a vector for viruses. So you do want to clean that equipment. You don't want to just immediately take some equipment from a dead out and install a new package in it. You do want to clean it out. Unfortunately, there are no research papers I know of that talk about how long we know American foul brood spores last for decades, but we don't know how long these bee viruses last on the combs. So I think you're good for cleaning and exposing it to sun. So that's what I would do. In regards to social distancing, I know that you want to check with, if you've ordered a package, your package provider, make sure that they're still going in and delivering. Some of them are not. Rick Rowe up at the colony in Tingsboro, he's going, according to his webpage, when I last checked it yesterday, said they're still planning on the April deliveries. What they're going to do is you're going to pop your trunk or roll down your window. They'll walk over, put the packages in, and you drive out. So it's going to be curbside pickup only. You will not be going in and shopping in person in the store at this time. So check with your package suppliers. So that's what I'd probably suggest doing. And I'll have to think about dealing with pheromones and social distancing. I'll have to think about that for a little bit. but I'm going to move on to another question. But I'll keep that in mind for the next couple of days and email Jay Toll. So when is the earliest time and safest time to split? Well, I'd probably wait until the temperatures are in the 60s, probably in the dandelion bloom. If you're thinking about doing a split, making sure that they have a queen. If you're thinking about just experimenting, seeing what happens, you want to wait until the dandelions are out because that's when they start raising drones. Really, I'd say late April, early May is probably the safest time to split. And that's when you start thinking about management styles then. This is my question. My hive is super congested with 2 beeps and a medium. What am I looking for as an indicator, a safe time to split? Plan to purchase a mated queen. I don't want them to swarm on me. Do you have any other boxes? Do you have any other drawn comb? And if you had an extra medium with drawn frames, you could put that on top of the current boxes that you have. You don't want them to swarm on you. You do your best to manage their space and give them some space. So I have a super congested with 2 deeps. So I'm curious if, Liz, if you've gone into your colony and seen where they are. If you haven't opened the colony itself, have you gotten a FLIR camera and seen how large the cluster is and where it is in the colony? That would be interesting to know. I'd probably hold off for now. I hope that's decent advice for now. Why not give them to the bees? Why not? Liz, could you maybe unmute? Kathy Martin. Kathy, could you unmute? And I'm confused by your question. Why not give them to the bees?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
So I have a hive that was given to me by someone who was moving.
Okay.
And she thought it was a nice full hive, and I went there and got it, and it was a dead hive, but I brought it home and it's full of honey.
Okay.
And I just heard you saying not to give the leftover honey to the bees, but I was saving it, hoping I could get, because I have a new package coming from Rick in the middle of April.
Sure. What I caution about using it, you can use it, but I would just want to make sure to know why the colony died that left some honey behind. If it was a small cluster going into...
No idea.
No idea. Have you gone through the hive at all?
No, I should do that.
Yeah.
That's silly,
yeah.
I haven't.
Go through the requested to control my camera. Sure. So what I would suggest is going through downloading the University of Maine. It's either University of Maine or the Maine Beekeepers Association. I'll make sure that PDF is on the internal website, and go through and do an autopsy and figure out why the old colony passed away. So
thank you.
Once you have an idea of why it passed away, then you have information and you can go forward. So if the colony, had mites, just spraying the outside with the little bleach solution, exposing it to sunlight, and then you're good to go. If they died of a more serious condition, then you might want to just keep that honey for yourself, because those bee issues usually don't transfer over to human issues. And when I say usually, I'm just thinking of eczema. If the honey is covered with dysentery, then I personally wouldn't want to sort of extract that, but that's just personally. So that's my opinion. Find out why the colony died, and then you're most likely you're good to go, but knowledge is power. Is it okay to remove a mouse guard now? There was a Freudian slip. No, it's not okay to remove a mouse guard. I'd wait until you do your first inspection and it's a nice warm day and you can go in and when you go in and break those propolis seals and manipulate boxes, then it's probably okay to remove a mouse guard. Although if you ask Jennifer Reed or me, it's never okay to remove a mouse guard. We keep our mouse guards on year long. So take that for what it's worth. I probably keep the mouse guard on now. We still have colder days. The mice are still looking for warmer places to reside in. So that's what I suggest. Oh, someone put up that Maine beekeeper's autopsy report. You can download that right from Jay Tull. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So Tom recommends waiting to make a split until good nectar flow is on. So waiting until after the dandelion. So again, later this month, beginning of May, what you want is for the dandelions to be in full bloom or even past before you even think about starting to go with making splits. So, okay, who else? Does anybody else have any questions? I hear someone typing away. Okay. Okay. Mouse guard is wooden block that allows only one bee in at a time. I don't like the wooden blocks. I don't like, I prefer the stainless steel mouse guards with holes in it because the mice can chew through the wooden blocks. The wooden blocks, those are actually entrance reducers. So it sort of limits the, like you said, the bees getting in and out of the colony itself. I personally use some hardware cloth, so the wire mesh, and cover up 3/4 of my mouse guard. That allows for ventilation, but it still limits the entrance size for the colony to guard. But if you go that route, I would definitely still keep the wooden blocks in place at this time. I wouldn't remove them until the colony is larger. I like a congested entrance. That's my personal preference. So I keep the entrance small, especially for smaller colonies, weaker colonies. When you first install a package, when you get a nuke, those colonies are smaller, and having a smaller entrance helps them stay safe and keep their stores on. So that's what I'd recommend personally. So I keep that on as long as possible. Okay. When setting up a hive for a new package, I apologize for most of you can probably just see this on the chat. So new hive for new package, can you combine drawn comb frames with frames that are not drawn? Yes, yes. When you're setting up a new colony, if you have some drawn comb is gold. It allows you to do things faster and easier. If the bees aren't working to build comb, they're working to fill that comb with bees, with brood, and with honey. So if you have some drawn comb already, it kick-starts the package and it gets them going a lot faster. So drawn comb is great. So if you have some drawn comb, definitely use it on your new colonies. Why would you want a congested entrance? Don't the bees waste time fighting their way in? Well, out in nature, the holes for that Tom Seeley found when he did research in his newest book, The Lives of Wild Bees, he found that the entrance size is small. It's not large. If you sort of the reversible bottom board screen, solid bottom boards, the have a large side and a thin side, and 14.5 inches wide, less the side walls. That's a lot of space, and that's a lot larger area than what you find in nature. So in nature, they have smaller entrances. The word propolis comes from the Greek propolis, so that's before the city. So bees will actually propolize their entrances down to smaller sizes to manage the inflow and outflow. So that happens in nature, and it's practice that I recommend mimicking. So that's what I like to do, and that's what's been found to be effective. So just my opinion. Go whatever route you want. If you ask 10 beekeepers a question, you're going to get 10 different answers or 11 different answers. Just remember, not all those answers are correct. I'm not infallible, and perhaps I'm wrong on this, but I don't think I am. I think a smaller entrance is more beneficial to the colony. My bees are using the upper entrance and not going out the lower entrance. Is that normal? Yes. So what you want to do is remove the mouse guard and see if the bottom entrance is blocked. The colony is probably up at the top of your boxes right now, and they are using the easiest and fastest exit to get in and out. But you do want to remove just temporarily, take your mouse guard off, scrape out, remove any dead bees that have settled down on the bottom board, whether it's screened or solid. You want to clear out the entrance so that it's easy for them to get in and out if they choose to use that. Once we get warmer, and again, when you do your first full inspection, you can close that top entrance up and they'll start using the bottom boards, the bottom entrance, as they did last year. I have one colony that does that. They just like it that way. Yep, bees are bees. They don't read the books. Every colony is an individual, and they're going to do different things based on the Gen X of the queen. So it's normal this time of year, but that's what I recommend. Upper entrances, short distance in and out. Yep, totally agree with what Thomas said. And there may be a pile of bees down at the bottom, so you want to remove the bottom board and clean that out. John said he reverses hives today, and he marked one of his queens. Well, good for you. That's awesome. Awesome. You definitely want to do that on warmer days and days that there's going to be at least a couple warm days following. So you want to keep that brood nice and warm, and doing so on a nice warm day. And if you have a couple days after, so that'll help the brood survive for longer. So excellent. So it's getting to be nice and warm enough to do that. So just make sure temperatures are near or above 60, and we have some good weather following. There's a lot of pollen on the ground in front of my hive, so I took the reducer off. Was that the best thing to do? I keep the reducer, entrance reducer, mouse guard available, especially if it's going to get back to near or below freezing, and pop that back on. I just keep mine on year round. So if there's pollen coming off, that happens. That happens as they're getting into the hive. If you look underneath, if you have a screen bottom board and you take off your sticky board, you're going to see pollen that trickles down through the screen bottom board. So we definitely see that on the ground and inside. If there's a problem with the pollen itself, if there's pesticide, what the bees will do is roll off that pollen and seal that off with propolis and wax. But pollen down in front of their colony, that's normal. And you'll see that underneath the screen bottom boards and on your bottom board if you have a solid bottom board as well. As this year compared with previous years for nectar flow? Nectar flow hasn't started yet. It looks like it's going to be earlier this year than last year, but then again, last year looked like we, by Patriots Day, everything was looking like it was humming along, and then we had 3 weeks of cold, wet, rainy weather. Who knows? It's New England. Hopefully we won't have to wait for a minute, as Samuel Clement said, but if hopefully we get the start of the flow in a few weeks. I think that's just best guess. Yeah, it's way too early to assess the nectar flow. So I'm a little behind on the chat. I apologize. To me, we're about 2 weeks early this year so far. Yep, 2 weeks early. That's my guess as well. We're a couple weeks early. Bees are bringing in pollen nectar. Yep, my bees are bringing in some whitish grayish pollen when I've been able to see what they're bringing in. So some yellow, but not the bright yellow that we associate with dandelions. I haven't seen any dandelions yet. I think we're still you know, a good week or two out from dandelions, especially if the temperatures continue on with their current trend. We take a poll on how everyone did with their hive survival. This is best year for over 10 years with us for 100% survival, knock on wood. Something different these last 2 years. Last year, I had 100% survival. This year, I started to do some experiments and did not have 100% survival. I'm looking at about 50% right now, so knock wood. But a lot of people are reporting 100% survival. Let me see if I can set up a poll. This I haven't done. Poll 1, edit, ask a question. What is your survival rate? Question, anonymous. Oh, wait.
Good. It's great.
Copy, paste, multiple choice, single choice, 10%.
Looks like people have done well.
Oops. 25%, answer 2, 25%. Oh, cursing, edit. 3, 50%. 75%. And 100%. Single choice. I think this is it. Add a question. Save. Tweet. I'll set this out. Yeah, I can't figure it out. I haven't done this before, so.
Looks like everyone answered here.
Yeah. So
pretty successful year, mostly 100%.
Yeah. 2 for 2, 1 for 1. Awesome. 5 for 5, 4 out of 4. Good. So what you want to do is when we get a little warmer, take a do a mite count. See how your bite's doing.
Everybody's typing stuff.
So
Everybody's typing.
got one.
I want to.
Yeah. So seems to be doing pretty good. When I flip bottom to top, so reversing bosses, should I get rid of all the old pollen frames? You do not need to get rid of your old pollen frames. So when you reverse boxes, again, if you don't have a pollen patty, if you have some pollen already in there, if the bees are going along pretty well, they will use the old pollen. They definitely prefer fresh pollen, newer pollen, but they will use the old pollen. If you have a hive that is alive and you want to get rid of that old pollen, that's fine. You can also give that old pollen, if you're getting a new package or a nuke, give that to them to start them off. And again, if that's a colony that is alive, a colony that is alive and doing well. If you have a dead out, then you want to see why the colony died. If it died of starvation, if it was just a small colony, that's one thing. If you have a high mite load, then I'd probably get rid of that pollen itself. So that's what I would suggest going and doing. So we had 3 survive, 5 out of 5. Looks like we had a pretty good year in terms of survival this year. And knock wood, everybody has a decent honey flow this year and has a decent honey crop. Speaking of which, if you do decide to take some of the honey frames off, if you have a super that you want to extract, we have a club extractor that's available for $15 a day. You can contact Kathy Martin, send her an email, and get a extractor honey, and hopefully that will see a lot of usage this year. Okay, so should I get rid of all pollen frames? I'd probably keep the pollen. That's just personally, except for dead outs. So, any other questions? Oh, how's everyone doing? Okay, great job with the e-meeting. Well, we've had some technical issues, but hopefully we'll learn and go forward. Seems like the bees bring in a lot more pollen this year than normal. Don't know if anyone's measuring. Cornell, maybe increased carbon dioxide levels. I think the problem with the increased carbon dioxide levels, if I remember a research paper, and Mike, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, increased carbon dioxide levels means a decrease in the protein potency in the pollen. So if we do have increased carbon dioxide levels, then we probably need more pollen because there's the pollen that the amount they're bringing in isn't as protein rich, so they need extra pollen. I think it's just more a function of just the temperature, and the plants that are coming out of dormancy and are producing. So we have lots of crocuses out, the sugar maples and poplars are starting to go. So that's my guess. But who knows? Anyone have experience with single brood chambers? I think Rick Rowe, he manages his honey producers with single deeps and I don't know if he uses mediums or deeps for his honey supers, but he has single box brood chambers, so he manages as well. There's a Canadian beekeeper who has some really good videos. It's Tim Cook, a Canadian beekeeper. You'll have to Google it. He has a number of videos on YouTube that are really good, and I'd probably check him out if you're interested in managing with a single brood chamber. With a single brood chamber, you definitely need to use a queen excluder. So, and manage your colonies that way, as opposed to sort of an unlimited brood nest. From what I've seen, people who manage either a single brood chamber have a lot more honey produced than someone who uses either 2 brood chambers, so 2 deeps, and then a queen excluder. I last year experimented with queen excluders and single deeps worth, and then with and without, and I didn't see a whole lot of difference between using the queen excluder and not, and using a deep or deep and a half worth of the brood area. But that was my first experiment with just a couple of hives, and that's not way to really draw good information out. So that's my guess. See, Ian Stifler, yes, thank you. That's the guy. University of Guelph has great videos, and those are the ones we recommend on the club. Red maple, witch hazel, silver maple, skunk cabbage. These are all in bloom right now. And John, just out of curiosity, how was your sugar flow, your maple flow this year? Did you have a good harvest of maple syrup? I'd be curious to see. And have you ever correlated that with 12 gallons? That's really good, because I know what does it take, 40 gallons? You boil that down to get a single quart or something. But have you ever correlated with the amount of maple and the honey production in later on, if there's been any sort of correlation with that? I know some years we've had droughts during the summer later on, so perhaps not, but just out of curiosity. 83% survival rate, that is good. That's getting up to, what we hope to see. Back before the days of Varroa, if you had a 10% loss, you were deemed to be a poor beekeeper. So if we can get up back up to 10% losses, that would be great. 60 to 1, 60 to 1 and 45 to 1. Well, that makes sense because, out in nature, different floral sources have different nectar contents. So of course that would make sense and hold true for maples as well, I would assume. So yeah, 83%, that's good. And if we can get back up to around 10% losses with managed hives, that would be good. That would be great. So if anyone has any more questions, we can go ahead, call it an evening. If you'd like to ask me something offline, send me an email. And otherwise, if there are no further questions, hopefully we can get some. Nope, nice job, Tony. Well, hopefully we can keep it going. For the artistic inclined amongst us, I'd really like to get a t-shirt this year, get some swag printed, and for community building, especially after this really tough March and hopefully not too long in April we've been having with social distancing. So it would be nice to get together and hang out and be in our brand new shirts. So I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting now. If you have questions, give me a call. And I gave Tom Philip Thomas, excellent source for t-shirts. Excellent, great. Okay, have a good evening, everyone. Tomorrow should be a fairly decent day to get in, take a peek at your hives, see what's what, and check the forecast before you do some heavy manipulation. So that's my general and parting words. But once you can get in. Once you start feeding, definitely continue feeding. Have a good evening, everyone.